Hello. All right. Thank you everybody for your patience. We're walking nice and early today. So we have Claire Bridges' latest exhibition, Future Memory. And Claire, you may not know or may know, has been with us now. This is her third solo exhibition. This exhibition was inspired by her residency at Art Vault in Mildura. So it's a very big shift in the way that she was working. Last year, Claire won the People's Choice Award at the Shirley Hannon Portrait Prize. She also got the highly commended silver medal at the Black Swan Portrait Prize. And she's won the Living Art Award and the People's Choice Award at the Stan and Maureen Duke Art Prize at the Gold Coast. So she has a very impressive CV so far, and I'm really looking forward to hearing all about how this work has changed and shifted from her residency. Oh, and this is Marianne, who's doing our Auslan English interpretation today. So thank you, Marianne. Claire.
Thank you, Claire, and thank you all for being here today. It's so exciting to be able to share the work and to have you all here to share it with you. I really believe that as much as I do the work and have that opportunity to express my perspective or my view, it's so much more in being able to share it with you and have your experience of the work expanded. So I really appreciate you being here. To begin, I just want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we meet today, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to their elders, both past and present, and elders from other communities who may be here today. So future memory. I'm going to sort of jot forward a little bit to hit the slides as we go. So I wanted to share with you about a little bit about memory and why I would begin, I guess, to do this show about memory and what is future memory. I loved this quote from Oliver Sacks. Every act of perception is to some degree an act of creation, and every act of memory is to some degree an act of imagination. And that's probably at the heart of what this work is about for me, is both the remembering. Often we think about memory as something that relates to the past. Some of you I know are professionals and work with people on working through memories, perhaps painful ones or memories from the past and how that's influenced us and how we grow and how we understand ourselves. But there's also those aspects of memory which are about how we imagine. And each time we remember something, we can remember it new and differently. And the memory changes, and we change. So in some ways, memory is really imagination. I remember meeting Oliver Sacks. I was probably 16 years old. And it was when he'd written the book Awakenings. And you might remember the movie Cocoon, which was about memory. And many people with Alzheimer's that suddenly came back to life, remembering who they were, remembering their freedom and their joy of life and living and loving. And it was a very precious moment having that time to meet Oliver Sacks. And it was actually because of my mother interpreting for him. Thanks again to Marie. So there's another connection for me there, I guess, with him and his work, a very personal one. So the work here is about the nature of memory. And often we think about remembering something, perhaps as a reflection or kind of a recreation. And in some ways, as I talk about my work today, you'll see that some of my work is very realistic, and some people could relate to that and say, oh yes, it's like a photo, it's really capturing reality. And there's those other aspects of memory which might seem vague or foggy or perhaps distant, or that we're grasping at or clutching at, or we're creating as we go. So there is something in my work about that reflection. You can see right throughout the work reflection and duplication. But what I wanted to do was to go beyond that and to tap what is beyond the duplicating and reflecting in how we remember. We'll talk about that more as I go along. And why memory? What does that make of us? If you think about memory, it's like something about our identity and our sense of belonging, who we are. It gives us a sense of place. You know, we might remember where we were born. I was born in Shepparton. It's part of my identity. It's part of where I, kind of the soil I grew up in. I moved to Melbourne. And where is memory? It's one of those things. A lot of my work has been about our consciousness and our thinking and how we evolve as human beings. But where is memory? Yes, we've found some aspects of it in the brain, but where does it really live? You've heard of body memory, muscle memory. I have my first martial arts instructor here today. Thank you, Sensei, for being here. And he would understand, and many of you too might, about muscle memory. And when you train something, how it responds and how easily it goes with the flow of that. And that was certainly something that I practiced when I was training for many years. And again, that comes to imagination as well. You might have heard about those studies with basketballers. They had a core group that just imagined doing the perfect shot, getting the perfect hoop. And there was another group that went and practiced on the court, doing the layups and going for the shots. At the end of the study, they had them all do it again and evaluated who actually got more of the shots in. Guess which group did? The ones that practiced in their mind. There's the opportunity to practice perfectly and to imagine perfectly and to bring in all of the senses when you can imagine and train the body and train the mind and train the thinking, and it actually transforms the brain. Some of you may have heard about monks that meditate, and it's a whole group of people here that I share meditation with. Absolutely love doing that with you all. Thank you for coming. And you might know that when you meditate, that it actually transforms aspects of the brain. They've seen that it switches on parts of the brain and creates new neural pathways. So what we're doing with our brain and how we're remembering or imagining changes our physiology. Pretty exciting. Did you see that show recently with, it's called Retrain Your Brain? Anyone see that? Yeah. Fantastic. Scared the bejesus out of me. Being a little bit afraid of heights when he was training himself to climb across those canyons and up those rock walls and leap, into the valley of death, basically. But what's possible when we imagine and when we try to do something new and go outside of the comfort zone? And he found that his brain changed. We know that that's possible, that neuroplasticity of our brain. So part of what I'm doing here, or what I'm hoping for in the work, is in remembering our connection with our earth, and some of the things that you're probably aware of, especially at the moment, the issues of climate change and the importance of that and the focus on that. So part of this for me is about how I remember my relationship or my connection to the earth. So I'll take you on a little journey with me. Just give you a time to read that. So a couple of points just from the statement there, and I won't read it all again. are about the nature of, you know, this amazing time machine that memory can be for us to, in a moment, take us from here to the past to the future. And so you'll see throughout my work there are symbols, almost like doorways where we can step through from this moment into another space and time. So future memory is also about tapping into this moment to take us into a future and perhaps imagine how things could be and bring it back. I'll try and say this word. Nemesity. Some of you may know Mnemosyne is the mother of the muses. If you've ever heard of the muse, those wonderful goddesses that are imagination and inspiration. And Mnemosyne is the goddess of memory. Now, I've kind of brought her in at this point because often when I work, just to give you an insight into how I do things, the images come, the inspirations happen, and it's not until during the work or later that I'll discover, that's what that image is actually about. So I didn't go to Mnemosyne first. She arrived later. Some of the interesting things to know about Mnemosyne is she was the first philosopher, and she has the gift of the power of reason. She's got the responsibility for naming all objects. And so she's given us the ability to dialogue and communicate with each other. She is the goddess of remembrance. This isn't actually her, but it could be. So I guess I'm relating it to her because she also presided over a pool. And so here I have this figure which is muse-like, and it's called Future Spill. So I've got this sense of perhaps memory of the future spilling into the present and the goddess arising from this pool, perhaps. I'll let you interpret it as you will. But this arose from my subconscious and my imagination. Just to give you a quick run through of my background, some of you might be completely new to my work, and thank you for coming in at this point. But you might have know that kind of drawn from this sense of appreciation of I guess, the classical or master painting and drawing traditions. And this work, After the Bath, I brought it in here too because this red scarf tends to carry throughout a lot of my work. So here it is on her head. Now we see it draped around the waist of my figures. This work showed here a couple of years ago, Alchemy. Again, really, the theme perhaps that carries through my work is one of transformation. A subtle thing that you may be able to see in this is from left to right. It changes from a lead-like silver to a gold colour in the pattern, representing the art of the alchemists and transformation. And my models are very clever because they can levitate. So going through that sense of from the realistic through to the imaginative, this work is perhaps a turning point where it really connects the figure and the landscape, perhaps a turning point for this work, and very spontaneous. So again, that's another aspect which probably arises more in the body of work that you see here today too. Wasn't particularly planned, So yes, I work with models and I draw and photograph them, but the chair and how it transformed was quite spontaneous and only happened while I was painting it. Just brought some of these in as well, just that sense of the textural and gestural paint and the sense of emotion. And I guess to look back and go, okay, these emotions were perhaps those darker emotions, and that textural paint very immediate and spontaneous. And so how has that shifted now to this work, where again the texture has come back, but there's something in the spontaneity of quite a different quality. Just want to show you this one. Coming back to the residency in Mildura, it was an absolute pleasure to go up there. And it was at a time where I'd come through a really busy period of work and exhibiting, and a chance to just go out on a limb, in a sense, and go beyond the familiar and see what could stimulate or inspire some new creativity and new work, and what else could happen. And it was so fortunate to go out into the landscape. And here I am at Hattakulkine National Park, which at this period of time, the wetlands are flooded to really rejuvenate these rivered red gums and this amazing ecosystem of flora and fauna. Interestingly, this could be the last image that you might see I have ever made. This is this creature. It's not my photograph because I did not even have the presence of mind in a way to take a photograph, but I was standing there looking at that scene, that beautiful scene of the wetlands, and behind me I could hear a rustle in the grass, and it sounded, oh yeah, I can hear that. I was looking at what was in front of me, taking photographs of those beautiful trees, and it sounded heavier than a lizard. So I was standing there, I just looked over my shoulder, turned and spotted this amazing uncoiling brown slithery length with this darkened head moving, and I was mesmerised. There was no fear at all, looking at this beautiful creature, slightly stunned, but amazed. And thankfully it decided to move away, and seriously, it was just an arm's length, like just there. So I say it's probably fortunate that I'm here today because this snake, which I believe is the inland taipan, the fierce snake, the deadliest snake on the planet, can kill 100 men with one bite apparently. So it decided not to bite me that day. And it was interesting because I feel like it's a kind of metaphor. Anything can have meaning, and I decided to, or I'm fascinated by the meaning things can have. And in a way it felt like transitioning through that symbolic death into what else was there. So that, again, this connection with the landscape, some earlier work. And this is a remembered landscape. I spend quite a bit of time out on the lakes at Eildon as well. So I'll just give you a brief kind of background about that as we almost wrap up. So it's an incredible time of day to get out there early in the morning, sometimes pre-dawn, usually for a water ski. But there's this sense of looking for the stillness and looking for the mirror and reflection in the water. And often the rising mists just before the sun kind of creeps over the hill and that golden light hits the water. So they're very magical moments and lots of anticipation, waiting for the day about to break. And even though I don't look at those images when I paint, it somehow arises from memory, and that's what I've been working with this work, is not looking at specific images, but going into what I remember of a moment, the feeling of a moment, that sense of light or colour, or the coolness of the air, or the warmth of the day, the feeling of how I was at that time, or the people around me, or something that inspired me, like the colour of the sky. And then it's funny when you go back to the work and you go, oh my goodness, it really looks like that place. And I wasn't even looking there, I was looking within. My partner Shane mentioned in one of the works that he looked at, which is just around the corner here, I painted it and he said, oh yeah, that's Goffs Bay. And I was like, hang on a second, that's actually a real place. He said, oh yeah, you go around here, that's it. And he could tell the landmarks. It wasn't something that I had looked at, but it's in there, it's within. So I love that aspect of our memory, that we can draw it out even if we don't realise it's so exacting. That's me at a billabong, completely blissed out, dissolved into the landscape. A couple of the people I met there. And just as we move into completion, before a couple of questions, I want to show you just some images of Mungo. Now, Lake Mungo is an extraordinary place in the heartland of northern Victoria, southern New South Wales, and it is the place where the oldest and earliest modern human beings in Australia were discovered. So here we have proof of our first peoples, our Indigenous people. Mungo Lady was the first to be found, and then Mungo Man, at least 40,000 to 60,000 years old. My guide here, Graham Clark, a Barkinji man, and the Barkinji have been continuous custodians of this land. So he was able to share a lot of his storylines and songlines and talk about the culture and tradition of his people in this area. Now, just on to see Graham actually doing these hoops as well. He was talking about time, eternity and time, as he was doing these interesting kind of doorways and portals through these hoops. There's such a sense of everything moving and shifting at Mungo. It's dissolving, it's constantly in motion, and yet ancient at the same time. So you can see the colours actually come from nature. The crossing, just to give you an insight into that one as well, the confluence, this point here is the confluence of the Murray and Darling rivers, the two longest rivers in Australia, which also is an aspect of the work, the crossing. So thank you so much for sharing that with me. If there are any questions, please stay on and feel free to enjoy the show.